They were the kind of couple people envied, beautiful, vibrant, and hopelessly in love. Eleanor and Mark Hawthorne married on a crisp October afternoon in 2017. The wedding photos show golden leaves swirling around them like confetti, her lace veil catching the wind, his arm wrapped protectively around her waist. There's a kind of electricity in every picture, as if the two of them knew some private joke the world wasn't in on. They danced beneath strings of amber light until the generators sputtered out and the guests had gone to bed. At midnight, they left for the airport, still in their wedding clothes, and boarded a red-eye flight to upstate New York. Their destination, Black Hollow, a secluded lake town nestled deep in the Adirondacks. Eleanor had found it while searching for quiet honeymoon cabins. It was supposed to be remote, private, romantic. It was the beginning of everything. But they never came back. The Hawthornes checked into the Timberlake Lodge on October 17, 2017. The building itself was a century old, a dark, wood-beam structure with a wraparound porch and windows that looked straight out onto the lake. The staff described it as rustic, though in truth it felt older than that, like it belonged to another century altogether. The lodge's concierge, Maria Espinoza, still remembers the couple vividly. They seemed enchanted, she told police later, like they were living in a bubble no one else could see. Guests noticed them too. Mark and Eleanor were inseparable, canoeing in the morning mist, reading together by the fire at night, whispering to each other in a language of their own making. But there were small, strange details that went unnoticed at the time. Maria recalled catching Mark standing on the dock late one evening, staring out into the fog as though listening for something. When she asked if everything was all right, he smiled politely and said he was just hearing the water breathe. 2 days later, on October 19th, the couple rented a canoe from the lodge's private dock. Eleanor's neat, looping signature in the weathered logbook is the last trace of them. They never returned the canoe. When the lodge staff realized the couple hadn't come back by nightfall, Maria assumed they'd simply stayed out too long. But the next morning the canoe was still gone. By noon she called the police. The search began within hours. Helicopters scoured the lake. Divers descended into the murky water, their lights cutting through the dark like needles through skin. Canine units tracked the forest trails, though the scent seemed to vanish halfway along the shoreline. No footprints. No overturned boat. No torn clothing. No signs of struggle. It was as if the Hawthornes had been erased. Locals whispered their own explanations: elopement, murder-suicide, even a bear attack, but the official investigation turned up nothing. Lake Belden, a body of water 200 feet deep at its center, offered no clues. By January 2018 the case went cold. Still the rumors persisted. People said if you stood on the dock at night, you could hear a woman's voice echoing faintly across the water, calling a name that never came back. Others swore they saw shapes moving beneath the surface, long and slow, like shadows learning to swim. 7 years passed. Then came the drought. By August 2021, Lake Belden's water level had fallen nearly 12 feet, exposing a muddy graveyard of tree stumps, debris and half-submerged ruins from a 19th-century settlement long forgotten. A team of wildlife biologists dispatched to monitor the ecosystem stumbled upon something buried in the mud near the northern cove. A rusted canoe. Its ribs cracked, its surface mottled with algae and decay. Inside it, a cluster of sun-bleached human teeth. Beneath it, a skeleton wrapped in the tattered remains of a wedding dress, the fabric fused with mud and bone. Clutched tightly against the ribs was a small antique-looking cassette recorder, its battery corroded, its casing marked with faint scratches like claw marks. The medical examiner identified the remains as Eleanor Hawthorne. Mark was still missing. The cassette was transferred to the state forensic lab, where technicians carefully restored what little sound remained. Most of it was static. But buried beneath the noise, fragments of a voice survived. Eleanor's voice. "Something's wrong," she whispers, breath catching between words. "Mark's not Mark anymore. He brought me here on purpose. He keeps talking to the lake. He says it speaks to him, that it wants me. Like slow water against hollow wood. He says it chose us, but I think it only wants me." Then another sound, a man's voice, low and distant, chanting in a language no one could identify. Moments later, the recording erupts into chaos. Screaming, splashing, then silence. The tape ends there. Technicians noted one final anomaly: the background hiss didn't match static. Its frequency pattern resembled breathing. The underside of the canoe bore an engraving, a circle surrounded by jagged radiating lines, like a sun with a hollow heart. Forensic archaeologists later connected the carving to symbols found in a submerged cave system beneath Lake Belden. The cave, usually inaccessible, had briefly surfaced during the drought. Inside were more carvings. And bones. Human bones, etched with the same hollow sun design. The site was declared one of potential ritual significance. Anthropologists speculated about indigenous origin myths or 19th-century cult practices. But the locals called it something else. According to legend, it was once a place of offering. Every generation, a pair, the chosen two, were taken by the lake to ensure the waters stayed calm. The ritual was said to bind the living and the drowned together forever. In late September 2023, a hiker named Joel Rains found a barefoot man wandering a forest trail 5 miles from the lake. The man's skin was pale, cracked from exposure, his nails torn, his eyes sunken. He was repeating a single phrase over and over. "It let me go. It let me go." Hospital records confirmed it. Mark Hawthorne, aged 34. He was severely dehydrated but otherwise unharmed. He claimed to remember nothing, not the honeymoon, not the lake, not the missing years. Yet within days of his recovery he began drawing circles with jagged rays. Over and over, on napkins, on the walls of his room, even on his own arms when no paper was left. When questioned about Eleanor, he became distant. And then, almost tenderly, he said, "She's still down there. Still listening." Eleanor's remains were interred in her hometown of Greenvale. Her coffin was sealed by state order, though the reason was never made public. Mark now resides in a private psychiatric facility outside Albany. He rarely speaks. But some nights, nurses report hearing him whispering into the dark, soft, liquid syllables that don't resemble any known language. And always, before he sleeps, he presses his palm against the glass of his window, facing north, toward Lake Belden, where the fog is returning, and the water is rising again.